So what we'd like to do now is take a look at an instance where we don't have some data we need and walk you through a scenario. Welcome to the Valmont Bike Park in Boulder, Colorado. This is a great regional resource that folks use from all over the area. They come and use it, and when the first time they get there, they're often surprised that it's free. And this is made possible because of a large volunteer support group that they have. But they do often have events there that require additional support from volunteers, and they just don't have enough volunteers. But they do have a volunteer coordinator, and she keeps a list of folks that have expressed some interest in possibly becoming a volunteer at some point. So we'd like to take a look at how you can use ArcGIS Desktop and ArcGIS Online to help her target those people and get some more volunteers for these projects. Eric?
Yes, thank you, Tim. As Tim mentioned, Belmont Bike Park is a great resource in Boulder, Colorado. What you're looking at here is a spreadsheet that the volunteer coordinator manages and maintains, and this is a list of the volunteers who help with the park. You can see here we have some very straightforward and simple information. We have address, city, state, and name. One of the really interesting things about volunteerism, though, is people tend to volunteer on a project that's closer to their house than further away. So to best market this volunteer activity, we want to find people who are close to the park and then send them a letter letting them know about the program. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of this information always begins inside of desktop. So here I am inside of ArcMap. I have the location of the park here on my map, and we have the Excel spreadsheet for the volunteers here. But I have a couple of dilemmas. I do not manage, maintain, or own a geocoder, nor do I manage, maintain, or own a street network that I can do a drive time analysis on there. But ArcGIS Online does have one of those. So if I go to the File menu and sign in to ArcGIS Online, watch what happens to these two nodes in my catalog window on the left-hand side. The ready-to-use services and the My Hosted services. You'll notice that some new information has been populated once I signed into ArcGIS Online. And for these ready-to-use services, I do have a geocoding service that's available to me that is actually a geocoding service for the entire world. Also, under the logistics category, I have a service area tool. This service area tool will allow me to create a drive time. So let's go ahead and use these tools, the spreadsheet, to actually do this analysis. So first, I'll drag and drop the volunteer addresses directly into my map. Here you can see, if I double click on it, that this is the exact same spreadsheet as we just saw. And I want to now geocode these volunteers. I'll simply right click, geocode the addresses, and here's that world geocoding service that's available to me once I sign into ArcGIS Online. How many of you manage and maintain a geocoder or geocoding service? Okay, well, for those of you who didn't raise your hand, remember this one's available for you. So I'm going to geocode my volunteer address, or my volunteers. Here's my address, my city, my state. You may notice I didn't have a zip code on my information. Well, that's fine. I don't have to have all the information to be able to geocode. So I'll change this to volunteers and just accept the defaults. So now I'm going to be geocoding over 400 volunteers to put them on my map. And there we go. All 443 have been matched. So here's a little tip. If you hold down the Alt key and click on anything in the table of contents, it'll zoom you to the entire extent of that layer. So now you can see all my volunteers and my bike park. But remember what I said. We want to find people that are close to the bike park. In order to do that, I want to create a drive time. I'm just going to double click on my Generate Service Areas and create a 15-minute drive time around this particular bike park. So I'm going to use my bike park as the location for my drive time. I'm going to make one 15-minute drive time. We're doing this in North America. And here's something I want to point out. We're asking these volunteers to go from their house towards the bike park facilities. So when I create my drive time, I actually want to change this to towards facilities. Also, here's another important piece of information, this time of day. This is important because we use historic traffic data to help create these drive time analysis. So depending upon the time of day and the day, the actual 15-minute drive time will change. So this one is going to be held for Saturday, right around 9 o'clock. So I'll just accept those defaults. Now there are many other options that we could look at, such as some barriers or restrictions of toll roads and unpaved roads. But I'll just go ahead and accept the rest of the defaults and create that 15-minute drive time. And there we go. So right now, we have almost all the pieces of information we need. The final piece of information is to do some simple spatial analysis and select by location. So we want to select the volunteers that are within the 15-minute service area. And there they are. And if I open up my attribute table, we can see that I've selected 165 of the volunteers. Now, I'm at a crossroads here. I have a decision to make. I could export this table back out into a spreadsheet and send it to the volunteer coordinator, and my job would be done. But I want to actually present this information to her in a more appropriate and a more useful manner. So, new at 10.2, we have the abilities to create labels directly inside of ArcMap. So under the View Reports category, I'm going to run a report that is used to create mailing labels. So it's going to take all this information from my attributes and generate a report right here. So I could print off all these labels for her and give this to her, or I could send this to her and have her create those reports. And this is in a much more useful manner. So that's how we can take some data from different sources, such as spreadsheet, bring them into ArcMap, and leverage services that are available in ArcGIS Online to create this type of analysis.
That's great. Thanks, Harry. What I think is really interesting there is it didn't take a large change in Harry's workflow to get access to those services. By simply logging into ArcGIS Online, he had access to all the services to get that project done. So remember, WebGIS allows you to curate GIS and non-GIS content. And providing access to those data is a good skill for you to keep sharp. Now, Harry, I know there's more services out there in ArcGIS Online. Can we take a look at some more?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So I've already logged into ArcGIS Online. And what you're looking at here is just a web map that contains some of the other services that are available to you guys once you log in to ArcGIS Online. What we're looking at here is actually the projected population growth for the entire United States for 2012 to 2017. What's really interesting about this information is you can visually see patterns quickly. So let's zoom into California. We can see that in the northeast portion of California, there's actually a decline in population growth. And here in Riverside County, though, when I click on it, you'll see that there's actually a positive growth rate in this area. We have information from the census 2000-2010. We also have information on Esri's projected population growth, as well as our forecasted population growth. So this isn't just a pretty picture. You can actually gain more insight into these areas by looking at each one of these particular pop-ups. So another piece of information I want to look at is this average household income. You'll notice we're looking at household income for the entire state. But as I zoom in, you'll see different levels of geography begin to appear. And I can go in even further to get all the way down to block group level information, which is a very fine level of detail. And once again, we do have those pop-ups that are available for us to gain insight into this estimated household income. But this isn't just a pretty picture. You can interact with this information. So what I want to do is filter out information in this map. So I'm going to use the filter option to find areas where household income is greater than $80,000. And I can apply that filter. And right away, you can see my map has been updated. I'm now showing you only the locations where household income is above 80,000. But we can even go back in and change this and edit it to have something that is like below or is less than 80,000 to show us those areas. And now, again, we see those areas of less than 80,000. So this information is all available to you. And Tim mentioned something early on, though, about having up-to-date imagery and if there's natural disasters. We're probably familiar with what recently happened in Boulder, Colorado. And there was that massive amount of flooding. Well, we've partnered with Digital Globe, which takes images directly after these natural disasters. So I want to add some of that to my map. So going to the Add dialog, I'm going to search for a layer. And specifically, I'm going to search for a layer in a group that I'm a member of, which is the Digital Globe First Look group. Inside of here, there will be a couple of different layers that I'll be able to use. So I want to look at this one here. It's called the Digital Globe First Look Post-Event Subscription Service. This, based upon the summary, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll go ahead and add that to my map. And a couple of things have happened. I've been zoomed to a new area. And within that area, I have also see that a time slider appears. There's been imagery taken by Digital Globe over many different days. And when I hit the play button, I'll be able to see the imagery that is taken in this particular area on a particular day. And here we go. So you can see between September 16th and September 21st, imagery was flown. And you can also see the flooding that has occurred in this area. So this type of imagery can be very, very important for public safety, emergency response after a natural disaster like this. And as the curator of content, being able to access this type of information quickly is just extremely valuable and important. So there you go, Tim. There's a couple other things I wanted to show.
Thanks, Harry. So as you mentioned, by sharpening that skill of curator of content, you can access content and services as needed without having to host and manage those yourself. This is really great for you need access to things once or twice a year. You don't have to worry about maintaining those on your own.